One day, a restless 10-year-old, Tyler, spotted an elderly homeless man near the playground. With a mischievous grin, Tyler walked up to the man, holding a bottle of fluid in his hand, expecting no consequence. As he doused the man with his drink, he just sat there, Tyler's friends laughing along. The next morning, the police were at Tyler's door, asking for him with a stern expression. What has he done now? Tyler's father, Emmett, asked the police officers with a sigh. He knew his son wasn't the easiest. He had tried to teach him manners and kindness for as long as he could remember. But even as a young child, Tyler had always acted out. He has to come to the station with us, the police officer answered sternly. Emmett's stomach dropped. Had his son finally crossed the line? He usually did harmless pranks, like ringing someone's bell numerous times and running away before they opened, or squeezing a peeled banana through someone's mailbox. On one occasion, Tyler had stolen an elderly woman's walking stick, making her unable to walk home. Had he finally broken the law? Was his son finally being sent to jail? Emmett quickly walked up to Tyler's room, yanked him out of bed, and brought him to the police officer, still in his pajamas. He's all yours. I'll meet you guys at the station, Emmett said, as he pushed Tyler gently into one of the officer's arms. What the Dad? Tyler cussed. Language! Emmett hissed at his son. A 10-year-old boy should not cuss like that, he added. As soon as the police officers had taken Tyler away in their car, Emmett called his wife. The police have Tyler in custody, he said irritatedly. His wife, Sophia, wasn't surprised either. Maybe this will be the lesson he needs, she said with a sigh. I'll call a lawyer. You can go to him, okay? She added. Emmett agreed, but he wasn't going to the police station just yet. Meanwhile, Tyler and the police officers arrived at the station. The situation should have been threatening to him. He should have been intimidated by all those officers, or at least be a little bit scared. But Tyler was the opposite. It was as if he thrived knowing he had done something wrong. As if he liked it. He was an officer's worst nightmare. I'm Officer Wallace, and this is my partner, Officer Larison, one of the officers introduced. Tyler rolled his eyes as he slouched in his chair, looking at the officers with a smug expression. Why should I care? He laughed. Officer Wallace took a seat across from him, not breaking eye contact. Your future is in our hands, young man, he said, radiating authority. Tell us about what happened yesterday, Officer Wallace continued as he took out his notepad. Tyler pulled up his nose, turning his head away. I don't know what you're asking of me, he said. Officer Wallace and Officer Larison looked at each other with a look that said, We'll be in here for a while. Luckily, this wasn't their first rodeo. Just as Officer Wallace wanted to use a different method of interrogation, Emmett arrived. He asked the two officers to meet him in the hallway to discuss what had happened. He doused a bottle of suspicious fluid over a homeless man's legs, causing burns and irritation. The man had to go to the hospital even, Officer Larison said, not sugarcoating anything. Emmett sighed as he placed his hand on his forehead. What will happen now? He asked worriedly. We're here to find out what happened, but if the homeless man decides to press charges, your son will be sent to a juvenile prison. Officer Wallace sighed. Emmett couldn't believe it. His son, a criminal. There had to be something else at play as well. Suddenly, the three men were startled by Tyler, who had snuck up to them. I don't want to go to prison, he said, suddenly looking like a scared 10-year-old. They made me do it, he added, his eyes welling up with tears. Officers Wallace and Larison crouched down. Who made you do it? Officer Wallace asked, but Tyler clammed up. They brought Tyler back to the interrogation room and sat him down gently, trying to make him feel comfortable. Tyler's eyes darted around the room, his fingers fidgeting with the edge of his shirt. Officer Wallace and Officer Larison exchanged glances, silently agreeing on their next move. They knew they needed to break through Tyler's tough exterior. "We're not here to hurt you, Tyler," Wallace said softly, pulling up a chair beside him. Officer Wallace tried a softer approach, offering Tyler some water and asking simple questions about his day. Tyler eyed the water warily before taking a sip. "What did you have for breakfast?" Wallace asked casually. Tyler shrugged, mumbling, "Cereal." Larison leaned in slightly. "Did you play with your friends yesterday?" Tyler's eyes flickered, his defenses momentarily lowering. "Yeah," he replied, his voice barely audible. Wallace nodded encouragingly, hoping to build trust. Officer Larison found a crumpled note in Tyler's pocket with the message, "Deliver the message, or else." He carefully unfolded it, his brow furrowing at the ominous words. Tyler's eyes widened when he saw the note in Larison's hand. "Where did you get this, Tyler?" Larison asked, his tone gentle but firm. Tyler's lips pressed together in a thin line, refusing to speak. The note added a troubling new layer to the mystery. The officers showed Tyler the note, but he stubbornly refused to explain it, turning his head away. "Tyler, this is serious," Officer Wallace said, his voice calm. "We need to understand what's going on." Tyler stared at the floor, his jaw set in defiance. The tension in the room grew thicker with each passing second. Wallace sighed, realizing they were hitting a wall. "We'll figure this out," he murmured, more to himself than to Tyler. The officers were left puzzled and concerned, unsure of how to proceed with the uncooperative child. "What now?" Larison asked, running a hand through his hair. Wallace paced the room, deep in thought. "We need more information," he finally said. "There has to be something we're missing." Larison nodded, agreeing. The unanswered questions and Tyler's silence weighed heavily on their minds. They knew the stakes were high, and time was running out. The officers decided to track all of Tyler's steps from the previous day, starting at the playground. "Let's see where he went," Wallace suggested, pulling out a map of the area. They traced Tyler's usual routes, marking key spots. "He must have met someone," Larison said, eyes scanning the map. They headed to the playground, hoping to find clues or witnesses that could shed light on Tyler's mysterious encounter. They found witnesses who had seen Tyler talking to a red-haired stranger in a long coat. "Yeah, I saw the kid," said a middle-aged woman, pointing towards the swings. "He was with this tall guy, red hair, long coat." The officers exchanged glances. Their interest piqued. "Did you see where they went?" Larison asked. The woman nodded. They walked towards the old grocery store. The officers knew they were on the right track. The witnesses described the man as intimidating and secretive, always glancing over his shoulder. He looked nervous, kept looking around like he was being watched, a teenager said, leaning against his bike. Wallace jotted down notes quickly. "Did he say anything to you?" Larison asked. The boy shook his head. "No, but he gave me a weird vibe." The officers realized this stranger could be the key to understanding Tyler's actions. Officer Wallace took detailed notes on the description of the red-haired man. "Tall, red hair, long coat, nervous demeanor," he muttered as he wrote. Larison looked over his shoulder, nodding. "This guy sounds like trouble," he remarked. Wallace agreed, tapping his pen on the notebook. "We need to find him," he said firmly. The officers knew that identifying this mysterious man was their next crucial step in solving the case. The officers realized they needed to identify this stranger to understand the situation better. "We have to dig deeper," Wallace stated, his voice resolute. They started checking local records and surveillance footage, hoping to catch a glimpse of the red-haired man. "He's out there somewhere," Larison said, determination in his eyes. The search intensified, each new lead bringing them closer to uncovering the truth behind Tyler's troubling behavior. Emmett was allowed to take Tyler home for the night, hoping to calm the situation. "Let's get you home, buddy," Emmett said, trying to mask his worry with a forced smile. Tyler remained silent, his eyes downcast as they walked to the car. The ride home was tense, neither father nor son speaking. Emmeth's mind raced with questions, wondering what had led Tyler to such troubling behavior. At home, Emmett decided to search through Tyler's room for any clues. "Go to bed, Tyler," he said firmly. Once Tyler was in his room, Emmett began his search. He rifled through drawers, checked under the bed, and scanned the shelves. It felt invasive, but Emmett needed answers. As he lifted Tyler's mattress, something caught his eye. A sketchbook, hidden and seemingly significant. He discovered a sketchbook hidden under Tyler's mattress, filled with drawings of a peculiar symbol. Emmett flipped through the pages, his brow furrowing deeper with each turn. The same symbol repeated on almost every page, a triangle with an eye in the center. The drawings were unsettling, filled with dark, swirling lines and eerie imagery. Emmett couldn't make sense of it, but he knew it was important. The symbol was a triangle with an eye in the center, repeated in various forms throughout the sketchbook. Each drawing seemed more detailed and intense than the last. Emmett traced the lines with his finger, trying to understand their meaning. "What does this mean, Tyler?" he whispered to himself. The symbol felt significant, like a clue to something much larger and more sinister. Emmett felt a chill run down his spine as he examined the disturbing drawings. He sat back, holding the sketchbook tightly. The room felt colder, the air heavier. "What have you gotten yourself into, son?" he murmured. The symbols, the secrecy, it all pointed to something dangerous. Emmett knew he had to protect Tyler, but he also needed to uncover the truth behind these drawings. Emmett kept the sketchbook and sent Tyler to his room, locking the door to prevent any attempts to run away. "Stay in there and think about what you've done," he said, his voice stern. Tyler glared at him, but didn't argue. Emmett sighed, leaning against the door. The sketchbook felt heavy in his hand, a symbol of the weight of the situation they were in. That evening, Emmett and Sophia lay in bed, discussing what could have gone wrong with Tyler. "I just don't understand," Emmett said, rubbing his temples. "He's always been difficult, but this—" Sophia nodded, her eyes filled with worry. "Maybe we've missed something," she whispered. The room was thick with tension as they tried to piece together the puzzle of their son's troubling behavior. Sophia confessed that she had always found Tyler to be troublesome, but believed he wouldn't actually harm anyone. "He's always been a handful," she admitted, "but I never thought he'd do something like this." Emmett listened, his heart heavy. "I hoped he'd grow out of it," he replied. They sat in silence for a moment, both grappling with the realization that Tyler's actions had taken a darker turn. Emmett shared the disturbing drawings with Sophia, both feeling a deep sense of unease. "Look at these," he said, handing her the sketchbook. Sophia flipped through the pages, her eyes widening. "What does this mean?" she asked, her voice shaking. Emmett shook his head. "I don't know, but it's not good." They both knew they needed help to understand the sinister symbols Tyler had drawn. They decided to contact a professional for help in understanding Tyler's behavior. "We need an expert," Emmett said. Sophia agreed. "I'll find someone first thing in the morning." The weight of their decision hung in the air. They hoped that with professional guidance, they could get to the bottom of Tyler's troubling actions and the meaning behind the eerie drawings. It was their best chance to help their son. The next day, Officers Wallace and Larison headed to the hospital to talk to the homeless man. "Let's hope he can shed some light on this," Wallace said as they walked through the hospital's corridors. They found the man sitting up in bed, looking anxious. "We're here to ask you a few questions," Larison began, showing his badge. The man nodded warily, his eyes darting around the room. Emmett sent them an email with a picture of the symbol from Tyler's sketchbook attached. "This might be important," Wallace said, opening the attachment on his phone. The symbol looked even more ominous on the screen. "We should show this to him," Larison suggested. They printed the image and headed back to the man's room, hoping it would jog his memory and provide some answers. The officers showed the symbol to the homeless man, who immediately went into a full-blown panic attack. "No! No! No!" he screamed, clutching his head. Wallace and Larison exchanged alarmed glances. "What's wrong?" Wallace asked urgently. The man continued to thrash, tears streaming down his face. Nurses rushed in to help, but the officers knew they had struck a nerve with the symbol. The man started scribbling the symbol over and over, muttering about a dark past. "It's them! It's them!" he repeated, his hands shaking as he drew. Wallace watched intently, trying to make sense of his words. "Who are they?" Larison asked softly. The man didn't answer, his focus entirely on the frantic drawings. The room felt charged with a tense energy, the symbol's significance growing. The officers realized the symbol held significant meaning and needed to investigate further. "This isn't just some random drawing," Wallace said, his voice filled with determination. "We need to find out what this symbol means and who these people are." Larison nodded, already thinking of their next steps. They knew they were on the brink of uncovering something big, something that could explain Tyler's strange behavior. The officers calmed the homeless man, trying to get more information from him. "Take deep breaths," Wallace said gently, his hand on the man's shoulder. "We're here to help." The man gradually relaxed, his breathing slowing. Larison offered him a cup of water. "Can you tell us more about the symbol?" he asked softly. The man nodded hesitantly, his eyes still wide with fear, but willing to share what he knew. The man revealed that the symbol belonged to a secret organization that once controlled the city's underground. "They were everywhere," he whispered. "You couldn't escape them." Wallace and Larison exchanged serious looks. "What did they do?" Larison asked. The man shuddered. "They had eyes and ears all over the city. If you crossed them, you'd disappear." The officers knew they had stumbled onto something deeply sinister. He explained that he had been trying to escape from this organization for years. "They don't let go," he said, his voice trembling. "I've been on the run, hiding wherever I can." Wallace leaned in. "Why were you targeted?" The man shook his head, tears in his eyes. "I saw something I shouldn't have. They've been hunting me ever since." The gravity of his words hung heavy in the room. The revelation set the officers on a new trail, questioning who else might be involved. "We need to find out who these people are," Wallace said firmly. Larison nodded, jotting down notes. "Let's start with any known associates or recent sightings," he suggested. The man's story opened up a new direction for their investigation, one that could lead them to the heart of a dangerous conspiracy. They decided to dig deeper into the history of the organization and its members. "We need records, anything that connects the symbol to known criminals," Wallace stated. Larison agreed. "Let's check old case files and reach out to informants." The officers knew they were embarking on a challenging path, but it was necessary to uncover the truth. The search for answers was just beginning, with more questions on the horizon. Back at home, Emmett decided to confront Tyler again, this time showing him the symbol. "Tyler, we need to talk," he said, holding up the sketchbook. Tyler glanced at the symbol, his face paling. "Do you know what this is?" Emmett asked. Tyler's eyes widened, but he stayed silent, his body tense. Emmett pressed on. "It's important, Tyler. We need to understand." The boy's fear was palpable, but he refused to speak. Tyler's eyes widened in fear and recognition, but he still refused to say anything. "Tyler, please," Emmett pleaded, but his son just shook his head, backing away. The silence was heavy, filled with unspoken words and hidden secrets. Emmett sighed deeply, feeling the weight of his son's fear. He knew they needed help to break through Tyler's wall of silence and uncover the truth. Sophia suggested they involve a child psychologist to uncover what Tyler might be hiding. "We can't do this alone," she said softly. Emmett nodded, his desperation growing. "Do you think it will help?" he asked. Sophia placed a comforting hand on his arm. "It's worth a try. We need to get to the bottom of this before it gets worse." Emmett agreed, feeling a glimmer of hope amidst the chaos. "I'll make the call," he said, reaching for the phone. Sophia gave him a reassuring nod. "We'll figure this out," she said. As Emmett dialed the number, he felt a mix of fear and determination. They needed answers, and they were willing to do whatever it took to help Tyler. They scheduled an appointment with a child psychologist for the next day. "Thank you," Emmett said, hanging up the phone. Sophia looked relieved. "It's a step in the right direction," she said. Emmett nodded, trying to hold on to that sense of hope. They knew the road ahead would be difficult, but they were ready to face it together, determined to help their son and uncover the truth. Officers Wallace and Larison went undercover in the area where the red-haired man was last seen. They dressed in plain clothes, blending into the crowd. "We need to be patient," Wallace murmured as they settled into a coffee shop with a clear view of the street. Larison nodded, scanning the area. They knew it was a long shot, but they were determined to find the man and get some answers. They posed as ordinary civilians, blending into the environment while keeping an eye out for suspicious activity. Wallace sipped his coffee, casually glancing around. Larison pretended to read a newspaper, but his attention was focused on the people passing by. "Anything yet?" Wallace asked quietly. Larison shook his head. "Not yet, but he's bound to show up," he replied, keeping his voice low. After hours of waiting, they noticed a man matching the description, nervously checking his surroundings. "There," Wallace whispered, nodding towards the man with red hair. Larison followed his gaze, spotting the target. The man's nervous behavior was a clear giveaway. "Let's keep our distance," Larison suggested. They stayed back, watching as the man moved through the crowd, always looking over his shoulder. The officers followed the man discreetly, watching his every move. "Stay close, but not too close," Wallace instructed. They trailed him through the busy streets, careful not to draw attention. The man stopped occasionally, scanning his surroundings, his anxiety palpable. "He's definitely hiding something," Larison muttered. The officers exchanged a knowing glance, ready to move in when the moment was right. They decided to approach the man when he seemed most vulnerable. "Wait until he's in a quieter area," Wallace said. They followed him into a narrow alley, the perfect spot for a confrontation. "Now," Larison whispered. They quickened their pace, closing the distance. The man turned, his eyes wide with fear as he realized he was cornered. The officers prepared to make their move, ready for whatever happened next. The officers approached the man, who immediately tried to run but was quickly apprehended. "Stop!" Wallace shouted as the man bolted. Larison lunged, grabbing his arm and pinning him against the wall. "You're not going anywhere," Larison growled. The man struggled briefly but realized it was futile. All right, I give up," he muttered, breathing heavily. The officers cuffed him, ensuring he couldn't make another break for it. During the interrogation, the man admitted to being part of the secret organization. "You've got me," he sighed, slumping in his chair. Wallace leaned forward. "Tell us about the symbol." The man hesitated before nodding. "It's our mark. We've been operating in the shadows for years." Larison exchanged a glance with Wallace, both understanding the gravity of the situation. The man's admission was just the beginning. He recognized Tyler from their brief encounter and confirmed the organization's involvement. "The kid, Tyler, right?" the man asked. Wallace nodded. "Yeah, he's mixed up in this." The man sighed. "He was just a pawn. We used him to send a message." Larison frowned. "A message to who?" The man shook his head, avoiding eye contact. "I can't say more without a deal," he murmured, looking desperate. The man hinted at a larger plan involving the homeless man, but refused to give more details without a deal. "There's more at play here," he said, eyes darting around the room. "The homeless guy, he's not who you think he is." Wallace leaned in. "What do you mean?" The man shook his head. "I need protection. I can't talk without assurances." The tension in the room grew as the officers considered their next move. The officers decided to use this information to pressure him further for a confession. "We can't help you unless you help us," Larison stated firmly. The man looked conflicted, his fear evident. "You don't understand how dangerous they are," he whispered. Wallace nodded. "That's why we need to know everything." The man sighed deeply, realizing he had no other option. "All right," he said. "I'll tell you what I know." The room fell silent, anticipation thick in the air. Under the pressure of the investigation, the man finally cracked and revealed critical information. All right," he said, sweat dripping down his face. "I'll tell you everything." Wallace and Larison leaned in, listening intently. "The homeless guy, he's not just some random man. He's someone important." The man paused, catching his breath. "He's a wanted mafia boss, hiding from his past life." The room fell silent as the gravity of his words sank in. He disclosed that the homeless man was actually a wanted mafia boss, hiding from his past life. "His real name is Antonio DeLuca," the man explained. "He used to run the city's underground before he went into hiding." Wallace and Larison exchanged shocked glances. "Why is he homeless now?" Larison asked. The man shrugged. "He wanted to disappear, to live under the radar, but it seems his past has caught up with him." One of the mafia boss's rivals had discovered his location and used Tyler to send a threatening message. "They found him," the man continued, "and they needed a way to send a message without drawing attention." Wallace's jaw tightened. "So they used a kid," he muttered. The man nodded. "Tyler was just a pawn. They knew he wouldn't be suspected." The officers realized the danger Tyler had been unknowingly dragged into. The rival ensured the mafia boss's life would be in constant jeopardy through these indirect threats. "It's not just about sending a message," the man said. "They want him scared, looking over his shoulder all the time." Larison nodded grimly. "They want to control him, make him feel vulnerable." The man looked at them, fear in his eyes. "You have to protect him. If they find him again, they'll kill him." The officers were shocked by the revelation, understanding the gravity of the situation. "We need to act fast," Wallace said, urgency in his voice. Larison agreed, already making plans in his head. "This isn't just about Tyler anymore," he said. "We have to dismantle this whole operation." They knew they were up against a powerful enemy, but they were determined to protect Tyler and bring the criminals to justice. Armed with the new information, the officers set up a protection detail for the homeless man. "We can't take any chances," Wallace said, briefing the team. "DeLuca needs round-the-clock surveillance." Larison coordinated with local law enforcement to ensure DeLuca's safety. "We'll keep him safe," he promised. DeLuca, still wary, agreed to the protection reluctantly. The officers knew this was just the first step in a larger plan to bring the rival mafia down. They planned a sting operation against the rival mafia to dismantle their network. "We need to hit them hard and fast," Wallace stated. The team gathered intelligence, mapping out the rivals' operations. "We'll go in tomorrow at dawn," Larison said, finalizing the details. The officers prepared for the operation, knowing the risks, but determined to end the threat. They hoped this would bring justice and safety to those involved. Emmeth and Sophia, now aware of the dangerous situation, focused on helping Tyler heal from the ordeal. "We need to be there for him," Sophia said, her voice firm. Emmeth agreed. "He's been through so much." They spent more time with Tyler, creating a supportive environment. Tyler, though still shaken, began to open up slowly. The family knew it would be a long journey, but they were committed to helping him recover. They sought professional help to guide Tyler through understanding the severity of his actions. "A child psychologist can help him process everything," Sophia suggested. Emmeth nodded. "I'll make the appointment." They found a highly recommended psychologist experienced in trauma and began sessions immediately. Tyler, at first resistant, gradually started to engage. The therapist worked with him to understand his actions and the impact they had on others. Tyler, realizing the impact of his behavior, began to change, slowly learning the importance of empathy and kindness. "I didn't know," he said quietly during a session, "but now I see how it hurt people." Emmeth and Sophia watched as their son started to show signs of remorse and understanding. With each passing day, Tyler became more compassionate, demonstrating that change was possible. The family felt hopeful about their future together.